Now, that said, that kind of goes into what you were kind of talking about before the show, which is from that book you're reading about, like not judging yourself and not being so judgmental about where you're at.
Yeah.
Because again, that's a big problem is like, people will come in and like, let's say if you get those two guys, one guy's shrimping his way down the mat, no problem. And because he's an athlete, the new guy who's not struggling and then feels like something's wrong with him because he can't do it. And it's not that there's anything wrong with him. It's just that dude's been training in some fashion for a lot longer than you have. So, you've got your own path to go down, and it's just going to take a little bit longer for you to do some of the same things that these people get a little bit easier.
Well, and here's another thing, how do you deal with failed attempts? If you're someone that comes in, if you're someone that's used to kind of failure in a way, like, oh, well, this is just par for the course for me. If you're used to not necessarily failure, but having a hard time catching on versus somebody that's an elite athlete or a high level athlete, and you come into this sport like jiu-jitsu, you're going to have this ego that like, you're supposed to be good. Like you came from wrestling, right? And you start doing jiu-jitsu, you're like, I'm going to be a blue belt right away, right off the bat. I should be mopping the floor of people. And so there's that ego, right? And you expect these accolades, and you expect to be better than you are. And I think sometimes when you're looking at skill acquisition, dealing with failed attempts, and I'll ask you that in just a second, but dealing with like failure or not performing as well, I think that sometimes can be hindering because you're judging yourself and you're like, well, shit, nobody can watch me fail or should see me fail or get submitted by this skinny white belt or whatever. I should be better than them. Yeah. So I think like, there's another side to it. Like if you're this couch potato, maybe your skill acquisition isn't as fast, but you're not afraid to try because you're kind of used to dealing with these bumps and bumps in the road.
Yeah, this is true. This is the thing. There is a point in time, right, where I'll say it like this. A lot of times people treat their day-to-day training almost as if it's a test. You know what I mean? Where they're going to fail or they fail or they succeed, they win, they lose. The day-to-day training is typically, I consider it more like the lab, right? Where you're experimenting. That's really what it is. You're trying stuff out. And you have to understand that there are times where, yes, it's going to be a win or a lose, right? Like for instance, I don't believe in participation trophies. So like if you go to a competition, you're either going to win or you lose, right? And I know that people try to church it up with like, oh, you win, you learn, right? You don't lose. Like, well, you lose. And it's okay to lose sometimes. I mean, that's the biggest problem is that for some reason we act as if it's not okay to fail or lose. And so we don't even want to come to grips with the fact that we lost. Like, no, I didn't lose. I learned something. No, you lost. That's okay. It's okay to lose sometimes because losing stings. And it's that sting that makes you take notice to pay attention next time. Because like when you win, you won. You're like, nothing to change. Everything's great, right? But when you lose, you're like, oh shit, I did something wrong. Huh.
Yeah. It's painful.
I need to fix that. Yeah. It's like, for instance, if you touch the stove and the stove's not hot, no big deal. You'll probably touch the stove again. You touch that damn stove and it's hot. You're not touching it again because you're like, I need to learn a lesson.
Yeah.
And so I think that, it's not about acting as if failure doesn't happen, but it's not about taking it personally. So you can learn from it. You got to be able to view it and learn from it. And instead of looking at that sting that you have as a negative thing, use it as motivation. For instance, when people get nervous before competitions, you could look at it as bad. Oh, I'm nervous. Or you could look at it as this is like my body getting ready for something big. I think if I'm correct, I feel like I read somewhere where they did a study and they basically had people reframe the way that they thought about performance, the pre-match anxiety, pre-match jitters. And because the body doesn't really disseminate stress very well. And so it's just stimulated, right? And so they had these people interpret that stress as a good thing. And they seem to perform better from it rather than looking at it as a negative thing. I know for me, like as I got older, I started to embrace that nervousness that comes from the tournament because, it only comes when I'm getting ready to compete. And, if I sort of go with it, I end up doing better than I compete better now than I roll in the gym. It used to be the other way. I rolled in the gym better than I did when I competed. Now it's the opposite. And I think a part of that is because I've embraced that nervousness that comes up.
How did you do that?
I think not taking losses personally. because again, I think it's one of these things where when you feel like you have something on the line and you can't possibly lose, you can't lose, whatever, you get really nervous about possibly losing, right? It's like something, it's like, what is it? Like Carl Jung said, what you resist persists, so you're resisting this loss, right? And in turn, you create problems for yourself, right? So I remember there were multiple times where I had opportunities to win matches, but I wouldn't go for them because I was thinking about what if I do that? What if? And I hamstrung myself to really win. And then as I got older, and honestly, I attribute it to some of the meditation stuff that I've done, where you just really look at your stuff and be like, why am I so worried about this? This is bullshit. This is all mental bullshit, right? And you just become aware of it. And then it was like became fun. I'm having fun competing, and I'm just bouncing around and I'm trying stuff. And if it doesn't work, well, who cares? Like, I'll lose a match. So what? I've lost plenty of matches. Like, you just become free from it, and it allows you to have a lot more fun. And because of that, I think that then you're in this heightened state of arousal from the pre-match jitters and everything else, and the pre-match energy that you're getting. But then at the same time, you're not hamstrung by the fear of going for something. So it's this nice middle ground. And so I think that's where I kind of hit my stride with that stuff as far as competing goes. And a big thing was, just like in the gym, you kind of lose your attachment over, the happenings. They just are what they are. I don't take them personally. If I lose a round during the gym, or get submitted, or if I go to a competition and get submitted, I don't suck at jiu-jitsu. I just lost. Happens, right? I just failed at something. It happens sometimes. It all happens to all of us. I'll just learn from it and fix it. But I think that when I was younger, especially when I used to struggle with this, my big issue was I took it all personally. If I lost, I sucked at jiu-jitsu. My day was ruined, and I would run around being upset about it. Whereas when I got older and a little bit wiser, I didn't take it so personally.
You judged yourself. I think you're, you really, that's the thing. That book I read it's called The Inner Game of Tennis. It talks about learning and things like that. So like one thing before, I actually played tennis growing up, and it's very mental. It's a very mental game. It's a game of like highs and lows. You could be on a roll with, you see some of these guys are 5-3 or 5-1, and end up losing 7-5 or whatever. Yeah. It's just like, it's all mental at that point. Like, and so I think I was just thinking about like focus. So your focus was not on the past. Oh, well, I lost before. It was on the future. What happens if I lose? It was on the present. It was like, I'm going to go out there and do my thing, and I'm not going to judge myself regardless of the outcome. And so you were able to maintain focus, and you weren't wasting energy on thinking about what was going on over here before, or what's going to happen, what could potentially happen. You're kind of focused on what you're getting ready to do. And you brought up meditation for that. And like the other thing is, what's more present than your breath in the moment, like breathing and focusing on your breath. That's a great way. That's what they talk about, breathing is like, you keep hearing it over and over as a way to focus and kind of ground yourself. And I think the breathing is like something you do in the present moment. If you think about what you're doing right then and there, focusing on your breath, you're going to be present. You're going to be able to, kind of maintain that focus in a way. But you are correct. Like, I think it's especially one of the hardest things for me at black belt is not judging myself if I have a bad round or I don't do as well, because pretty much the majority of the students are not black belts. Yeah. They're brown or lower. So there's pretty much, you're there. If they get you, you're their achievement. You're like their, head on a stick. You know what I'm saying? If you get them, who gives a shit? It doesn't matter. So it's one of those things. That's one of the things you struggle with. Like I struggle with as a black belt is like, well, people are coming after me now. And if they get me, well, do I suck? Am I still good? Am I still deserving? All those questions. And I think like you have to think about for me, I think about how long have I been doing this and, where I've come from and how much better I've gotten and the level I've gotten to. And it's almost like, it's like you look at your whole body of work, right? Years and years of being on the mats, and, you're going to have hiccups here and there, of course. And I think black belt can be a rebirth in a way. We talked about that, like kind of starting over, because you've already accomplished like the belt. That is an accomplishment, achievement. Now from there, there's no more belts to accomplish. We talked about, obviously coral belts and stuff that, and stripes and rankings like that. But I think that being able to let go of that ego, especially a black belt, is freeing and allows you to kind of explore and get even better.
Mm-hmm.